next panel, Believe, Morningside panel.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm on Bennett College campus, and I better not just walk away without introducing the great moderator, the astounding, the phenomenal Dr. Bookman from Bennett College Institution, this wonderful, illustrious establishment. Dr. Bookman, you're ready now to come to the microphone as our great moderator, all in your beautiful red. That works for you? You good now? That's Gwendolyn Bookman. All right, there we go.
And indeed, this is an honor. I have so enjoyed this morning. I started with the tribute to Nelson, and it was just so heartrending. I hope all of you enjoyed it as well. I hope now that you are ready for another wonderful treat, and that's a discussion about this great book. I cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed reading it. I offer it to all of you, and I was asked to make an announcement about the fact that it is the North Carolina Humanities North Carolina Read for 2026. It is the February's Book of the Month. In your program, there is a scan for you to sign up for the virtual discussion of the book that will take place on the 25th of February. And I was also asked to tell you that the book is available for sale outside. And so any of you who have not yet gotten a copy, have not yet read it, I cannot tell you how highly I recommend it. It's wonderfully written. When you talk about history, there's so many ways you can frame it, but this one is engaging and so wonderfully researched. I am a North Carolinian. I was away, actually in Texas during this time. So it was wonderful for me to be able to get the details about the behind the scenes things that were going on in terms of how this book was put together. I'm going to stop for a moment now and let the panelists introduce themselves, starting with our author. And then after they introduce themselves basically by just telling you who they are, I will come back and say a few comments, and then we're going to open it up for a free discussion about this wonderful book and the wonderful dramatization that you just saw from North Carolina A&T. So we're going to start with the author and have him introduce himself, tell you a little bit about him, but we will start the discussion about the book after you've had a chance to know who's actually on the panel.
Hi, my name is Aran Shetterly. I am the author of the book Morningside, and am deeply honored to be here and on this panel and to witness that performance. Thank you. And I'm also the son of Robert Shetterly, who painted those amazing portraits we saw a minute ago. And I live in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Kendra Nicole Bryant-Aya. I'm an associate professor of English at North Carolina A&T State University, and I am so excited to be on this panel, especially with Aran, to talk about Morningside, because I, as well as some of my colleagues at home who are reading the book and talk about it every month, we have questions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miller Lucky. I'm a senior professor at North Carolina A&T State University and executive director of the Paul Robeson Theater. I'm here probably because I played the role of Nelson Johnson in the production Greensboro Requiem way back in the day at UNCG. I am honored to also have simply consulted this wonderful group of students. I'm so impressed and looking forward to it.
Peace. Good morning. My name is Brian Turman. I'm a lecturer in the Department of English at North Carolina A&T State University, and my area is Black popular culture, particularly hip-hop music and culture. And it just so happens that I live right down the street from where the Morningside massacre took place on Pitcher Street. So interested to have this conversation. I'm also reading the book, found it very interesting, and hope to enjoy this conversation here. Thank you.
My name is David Squires. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. My students report on a website called storieswetell.news. Storieswetell.news. Mainly it's the advanced reporting class, but other students can contribute. And our students have written about the neighborhoods in and around North Carolina A&T. I did not realize that Professor Turman was my neighbor. I have a house on McConnell and DeWitt, right down the street from Willow Oaks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Professor Arthea Perry. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication at North Carolina A&T State University. In all of my classes, I try to include the awareness of culture, history, and how we are living through and what we are living through. Our ancestors had to deal with that and worse. So I include all of those entities in all my classes.
This, first of all, gives you an opportunity to hear what we do best in the Academy. We make history real. We have many disciplines that we can engage with the material. And so it's a wonderful time, I think, to be talking about this book and the many, many ways it can be used. I'm going to take a few moments of privilege to talk about the fact that Bennett is now celebrating this year 100 years of its establishment as a women's college. We became a women's college in 1926, and as part of that celebration, the president started her first engagement with a book read that focused on some of the speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King. And for those of you who know and those of you who don't know, Bennett was the only place in Greensboro, I'm from Durham, in Greensboro, that opened its doors to Dr. King as a place for him to speak in 1958. And yes. And what a time are we in now where the bravery of our leaders must come to the forefront to stand up and allow these voices to be heard. At that speech, Dr. King said a couple of things, and one of them that meant something to me was the fact that at this time, we can be an extreme optimist, an extreme pessimist, or there's a third route that he gave us. His thought was that as an extreme optimist, you don't think there's anything else that needs to be done. We've already achieved our goals toward truth and honesty and all of those things about equity. And so you think we can just sit and let it happen. Then for the pessimists, you think there's nothing to be done. It's awful. We're at the worst time, so we should not even try to make any headway. And then Dr. King, in his speech here at Bennett, said he was a realist. He could take the best of each of those positions. And what he ended up saying is, we've come a long way, but we have a long, long way to go. And I think all of you here are testaments to that there are lots of things to be done. In my introduction, I did not say as such, but I'm a political science professor here. I have a law degree, and so I focus a lot on what can be done through the legal system. And one of the things that I was struck by in one of Dr. King's speeches, he said that social progress, first of all, never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. We must continue our efforts to move forward. But then he said a couple of things that really spoke to me. While morality cannot be legislated, behavior can be regulated. Law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. And so there's work to be done in all of these areas to get to where we need to be. And then finally, I want to mention a politician who I will not name, but who sends out information that I very much agree with. And his thought was something from a dissident in Russia, a Russian opposition leader. And this was a quote that he wrote about a week or so to me in an email to the rest of the people who he's also speaking out to. He says, "We must do what they fear, tell the truth, spread the truth. Everyone has this weapon, so make use of it." And part of what we're going to be talking about today is that truth-telling and putting the record as it needs to be. And then finally, I want to make a quote from the book that we're talking about. And it was by W.E.B. Du Bois. And he said, "Nations reel and stagger in their way. They make hideous mistakes. They commit frightful wrongs. They do great and beautiful things. And shall we not best guide humanity by telling the truth about all of this, so far as the truth is ascertainable?" And it was a question. So let's start our discussion by having this wonderful author talk.
Okay. Yes. So I just wanted to say before we get started, I am going to take my seat, but it's been an honor and a privilege to assemble this panel. This has been a vision of the chair of my department as well as the dean of our college for us to work together. It's been a transdisciplinary effort. So I appreciate each one of you on this panel. And again, my name is Yolanda Williams, and I'm a lecturer in the English department at North Carolina A&T State University. These are my students that performed after reading Mr. Shetterly's book, and then my students for this semester that's also reading the book and transforming the book into a feature film script. So you'll be hearing more from me. All right, thank you.
So we're going to start now by having the author tell us a little bit about, first, his feelings about the presentation. And I would love to start off with the first question to talk about the length of time it took him to do the research that led to the wonderful book that he actually wrote about this historic and very painful experience here in Greensboro.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here and to be talking it with everyone. You know, you write a book and you take a long time, and I'll talk about taking a long time, and you put it out into the world and you don't really know what's going to happen, if anyone's going to read it or pay attention. And so to come here and see this work that you've been doing at A&T, I wish I'd worn my A&T t-shirt today, is humbling and a tremendous honor. And, you know, I remember a conversation I was having with Mr. Lewis Brandon and Reverend Nelson Johnson at Dame's Chicken and Waffles many years ago. And we were talking about the importance of culture in creating change. And this is where, you know, I felt that I was coming in, right, to try to create information that would help people shift their hearts a little bit, perhaps, as they read this book, and move them enough to open their minds to the history. And, you know, I do a little bit of that, and now you're picking it up, the baton, and carrying that forward. And I think that that is just critical and impressive, and all I could have hoped for when I wrote this book. So thank you.
And how long did it take you to write this book?
So my dad talked about meeting the Johnsons in 2015. I was there. And I met them. In 2015, we were at the little Salvadoran cafe, Manny's Universal Cafe. And I walked out of there. I was living in Mexico at the time with my wife, Margot. And I walked out with a hair standing up on the back of my neck. I knew I was in the presence of greatness, but I didn't quite know what that meant or what it was. we got to see this tribute today and see a piece of that greatness, right? But I knew it. I felt the spirit of it. And so when I returned to the United States 2 years later in 2017, I came down here and I sat with Mr. Brandon and the Johnsons, and I asked their permission to try to tell a part of their story. And I didn't really realize the level of trust I was asking for, how many times their story had been betrayed, how hard it was, and the sensitivity required. And and all of my own biases and sort of sensibilities that I was going to have to overcome in order to try to tell this story as honestly as possible. And so it took me 7 years. And when the book publisher offered me a contract in the fall of 2017, I told them it would take me 18 months. They were very patient. And it took a long time for me to try to feel like I could tell this story truly enough to trust letting it go out into the world.
And trust you did a good job with, I think.
I'll just add, anything I get right in the story has to do with so many of the people here. There are so many. I look out at all the people who helped me with this project, and particularly, Mr. Brandon, and anything I got wrong is my own darn fault.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's turn it over now to our panelists to begin talking about the inspiration that led them to be involved with this project at A&T and what questions you might have as you've worked with it. I'm a newcomer to the book, and so I know those of you who have been reading it over the years and have struggled with some of the issues in it may want to talk directly with the author about those. So I'm going to let you start first, since you made the comment, and then we'll let each one in turn make comments about the book, how they were brought to it, and how they have processed it with their students.
Hello again. I saw Aran Shetterly on stage with, is it Dr. Lovejoy?
Jones.
Dr. Love Jones at the Greensboro Museum about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I am from Miami, Florida, and I moved to North Carolina in 2018, specifically to teach at A&T. And I had not heard of the Greensboro Massacre. I probably heard about it a few months before hearing Aran. And because I had heard about it that recently, and then Aran was promoting his book, I said, I got to go to this book talk. I think me and Love Jones, maybe one other, like the only black people in the audience. And I was like, damn, always. And I was shocked, one, that Aran was white. I was like, again, a white person telling this history, okay. And I had, my own biases. And I was hoping that this sister did a Q&A that would challenge Aran, and she absolutely did. She asked all of the difficult questions, and Aran rose to the occasion. And as they discussed Morningside, I was absolutely hooked and engaged and mad and interested and curious and mad. And I purchased the book, as I always do, and I got it signed. And I told Aran, I said, I want you to come to A&T. And then I started following him on Instagram. And I went home, talked to my wife about it, and started reading Morningside. And I started inviting other friends to read Morningside, but first told them, I said, now, the author is a white guy. I said, but he does this story justice. And he was the one to write this story. And his history telling is so thorough. And his literary skill, I don't think one can compare anyone to Toni Morrison, but I often use Toni Morrison to compare what Aran does in his writing. Because you have to keep a notebook of the characters, and I call them characters, of all the players. You have to keep a notebook because Aran does this Toni Morrison move where she gives you everything at the beginning. You're like, oh my God, well, how did this happen? And then the book unfolds, the characters unfold. And Aran does such a beautiful job in telling history to where it feels sometimes like prose, but it's maddening. And it is the story of Nelson Johnson and Joyce Johnson that makes it beautiful. It is Aran's ability to humanize all of the players that make it a beautiful but painful story. As the chair of the Faculty and Collaboration Committee at A&T, my committee was charged with trying to engage the various departments within the college in an interdisciplinary cooperative project. And I thought, I know it's trite, but we ought to have a big read. And we should do Morningside. And so for a semester or so, I was selling Morningside, and at the time, Jelani Favors was the chair of the Social Justice Institute at the college. And he was all in, because he had already had a healthy relationship with the Johnsons and the Beloved community. So much so, he said, I'm going to buy how many ever books you need to get the teachers started. And that's what Jelani Favors did, was purchase our first set of books for our teachers to begin reading. And that's my short introduction of how I came to Morningside.
Great. Oh, my goodness, that was great. Let's switch over, and I'll give the other side an opportunity, although these are not two sides, they just happen to be sitting this way, to say a few words about how they came to the book and some of the ways in which they've engaged their students with it.
Peace. Once again, my name is Brian Turman, and my area on campus is Black popular culture, and I was struck by something, in fact, I jotted down, something that Brother Shetterly said, and that is culture changes. And that's something that my work, particularly with hip-hop music and culture, has always dealt with. And I was thinking about the song by Public Enemy, Fight the Power. Our freedom of speech is freedom or death. And I think when I read words, and I got a hold to the book from Dr. Bryant, just saw a stack of books, like, yo, what's that? She said, yo, it's Morningside. Like, let me get one. I initially thought I was checking it out because she made me sign for it. I was like, it's free, I'll take it. And I realized upon reading it, one, I live right down the street from where these events took place. And there is a sign I was telling Brother Wesley, who happens to be a former student of mine. It's a beautiful thing to see his development. That I walk by this sign all the time, walking my dog. Never really paid much attention to it. I knew it was a memorial of some sort. I've been in Greensboro since '89. When I came to Greensboro as an undergraduate student, I met Brother Johnson, Mrs. Johnson. At the time, I was loosely associated with the Black History Club. Just talked to them about being a student at A&T. I work at the club. I became the advisor of the Black History Club. The connection with Brother Johnson deepened there. Brother Brandon, been looking at this brother 30 years easy, and they've watched my development. And I learned, as I read the book, I learned more about the humanity of Brother and Mrs. Johnson, way more than I ever knew from just talking to them. The humanity of Brother Brandon and the other folk who dealt with that serious situation. I remember that Morningside community that we called the Grove when I came here was a housing project community. And then it just hit me as I was reading the text, just how important it was to have that event there. Something that, as a young cat, I had never really considered how impactful and important it was for the poor Black and brown folk on that side of town to come together with all the other folk. And as I read the book, as Dr. Bryan said, the characters, for lack of a better term, I'm still that from you, Doc, how they came from all these variety of walks of life. Things that, once again, I walk by this sign every day. I'd read it, not really paid much attention to it, but as I started reading the text, I just got engulfed in it. And I remember even when it was snowing here a couple of weeks ago, I walked my dog down there. I just finished the text last week. Brother Shelley, I really do enjoy it. It did enjoy it. And I walked my dog down there and I was just looking around like, wow, like this history is right here, literally at my doorstep. And a lot of these people, I had the benefit of meeting in real life. And Brother Johnson and Brother Brandon and the other folk are just so humble that, man, it's 20, 30 years and I didn't really understand the depth of what they've done. And I think that for me and my students, once again, culture changes lives. And for me, being a constituent member of hip hop music and culture and thinking more in-depthly about how our freedom of speech is freedom or death. And I think that Brother Shetterly's words mean a whole lot to those of us that are loosely connected to the city, those of us that have made the city our home, those of us that knew Reverend Johnson and loved and appreciated everything that he did, but didn't really understand it. And so I think for me, it's super important that I've grown this better respect and understanding of what took place on 3 November 1979 and the people involved with it, because as always, people are at the forefront of change, and we have to be part of that change moving forward, not just today, but tomorrow and tomorrow's tomorrow. So I really do appreciate you, Brother Shetterly, for writing this text, man, and giving us this understanding of those great people and what they went through. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
I'm going to take just a moment again to just echo some of what we've heard. This is my book. I have got pages turned, I've highlighted, I will be going back through it. I was really appreciative of the comment of the characters. There are so many details in this book that bring the story home to you. I've been in Greensboro for 23 years. I am a North Carolinian, grew up in Durham, and it was wonderful to see the connection. So much of this began, some of its play out in Durham, which I knew nothing about as well. So again, I really offer it as a perfect opportunity for you to get a copy of the book today and begin reading it. Let's turn it over to Professor Lucky.
Oh, wow. There's so many angles here. I'll reference page 393. When you wrote about the play, Greensboro, a Requiem, I was blessed to play the leading role of Nelson Johnson at that production. And I'll just stick to so many stories to tell, but I'll stick to the one you wrote. You said that the play raised tough questions. Tough questions. Let me tell you how tough the questions were. The questions were so tough for the city of Greensboro and area that there were death threats to us.
The actors?
The actors.
Wow.
And I didn't know how deep this was, this thing I got myself into, until a police officer was assigned to me privately and walked everywhere I went, in the dressing room, to the bathroom.
Oh,
that's when I knew this was real. When I did my research into Nelson, and got to hang out with him, as an actor, you have to know what we call the given circumstances. Those would be the facts of the environment. But then I had to understand the psychology behind the man. Why did he do all of these things? And I think about that, the exercise, 3 words, and the 3 words that I knew from research was doer, action motivator, and sacrifice. Sacrifice. And that's what your book reminded me of, the sacrifice that Nelson had to go through, the sacrifice that he, beloved community, Joyce, that they had to go through. Being talked about, he mentions talked about, his name drugged through the mud. I mean, that's something Barack Obama recently made a speech about the things that's going on. And he said, we're a little cushiony today. He said, we're gonna have to step it up and make some sacrifices. And I think what these students here did today, and the work that you've been doing, Yolanda, Brian, you all are making sacrifices. And so one of the notes I wrote about what you did that's echoed in this book, you didn't just talk the talk. Nelson didn't talk the talk. He walked the walk with solutions. I loved it when you offered solutions. And this book is just a mental flashback of what we went through. I'm not going to spill all the beans now. I think the media might have a clip of the sermon that we did, Nelson did, and I copied it. But that's pretty much, I zoomed in on 393 and your readings about the play. Thank you.
Thank you.
As an additional note to the last comment, I believe it was clearly stated in the book that Bennett was the one place in Greensboro that opened its doors for the playing of that piece.
To host the
production.
anniversary.
Yeah.
Right, host the anniversary.
Yeah. And so once again, Bennett has
UNCG.
stood up and opened its doors to some places that were closed to some of these very important conversations.
Absolutely. Bennett hosted what was it, to get together and, right, the forum. UNCG hosted the production. We did the production at University of North Carolina, Greensboro. Yes, it was.
It was the anniversary when Reverend Johnson.
They went around looking for.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bennett was the
It was
place.
kind of be reoriented to the community after
Absolutely.
being away for a while.
Absolutely.
So it was a very important meeting and conversation and coming together. Let's go and hear comments here. We want to make sure everybody has had a chance to talk about how they got involved with the book and what it has meant to them.
My name is Arthea Perry. First and foremost, I was welcomed to the beloved community center by my students. When I returned to Greensboro, I worked with the Association of African Students, and under that we had an umbrella. But I really wanted to kind of focus on the trauma that still is in the community. My aunt lived on that street, my Aunt Bob. She's in her early 80s. I remember her talking about the bullets that came through her apartment as she laid on top of her children, two of her children. And sometime, I asked her, I remember over the years, you want to talk about it? I'd love to interview you. And she says, no, I can't deal with it. To this day, she can't deal with it. She can tell you just certain things, but she really just can't deal with it. So, it reminds me that often people, poor people, etc., are traumatized, and that trauma, again, is transferred to the next generation. So that sign that you walk by is not big enough. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, I didn't realize all the connections I had to the book until, I guess, we had one of our first meetings with Dr. Brian Aya, and we opened the book, and the first words were something like, on the evening of November 2nd, 1979. November 2nd is my birthday. And I started reading, and I immediately thought back to that day. Most of my siblings, even my sister sitting in the back, went to A&T. I teach at A&T, but I went to Chapel Hill. That weekend, I was visiting from Chapel Hill because my parents, bless their hearts, rest their souls, they love A&T, and they were in town that week. And so we were riding around the day after the massacre, and there were cops on certain corners. And I don't know whether it was my mind playing tricks, but I thought we could still smell gunpowder. So I said, oh man, I got to dig deeper into this book. And then I realized, okay, we have an article on Stories We Tell. No, we have a video on the beloved community center on storieswetell.news that one of our A&T students wrote. And for me, the book is just a treasure chest of information because, first of all, one of the grants I got is called Solution Journalism. You don't write about the problems, you write about the solutions. So we have written about the O.L. Richardson Community Center, and so we have articles on some of the members of the neighborhood that we met at the Chavis Library. And so now we've been trying to find more people, and this book just lays out what my advanced journalism students can go, the people they can go interview. We already have someone assigned to George Johnson and also Lewis Brandon. If y'all haven't seen the Bluefoot Library and all the collections of artifacts and articles that Lewis Brandon has written, he's collected, a lot of stuff only he had it. Nobody else had it. And so you can go and you can see, you can have a wonderful time going back in history. So we definitely plan to do that. And, you know, this book also is an opportunity for A&T's future generations, you know, the students, the people from A&T to, you know, have another cultural connection. When I was at Chapel Hill, the students from Greensboro, they distinguished themselves of being really cultural literate. They knew about like the Greensboro Four. I mean, the students from Greensboro, they stood out above, you know, say, students from like Raleigh, Charlotte. People in Durham, they knew about the Hayti section in Black Wall Street. And the other great thing about a book like this is that like there are books on the Hayti section of Durham. And some of y'all I know are familiar with a book out of Oxford, North Carolina called Blood Done Sign My Name, the young Ben Chavis. So this book and the characters that Mr. Shetterly has brought back to life will give my students a chance to go and interview them and their survivors, and to go back to the center and to sit down again with Mr. Lewis Brandon. So it's just awesome to have that kind of treasure coming out of Greensboro.
One of the things that I'm going to do first of all is turn our attention back to the author, who would like to have the privilege of speaking, of course. And then what I'd like to do is shift us a little bit. One of the things that we're going to be doing at Bennett, in fact, I'll be teaching the course, is part of our general education curriculum that was just recently revised. I'm teaching a course later this spring called History and Heritage. So I want to talk a little bit about what do we do with this? How do we use it? It's good to know the facts, it's good to have the story, but let's move now to what's our role to move from this information to what we need to be about at a time like this.
That's a great segue to a couple things I wanted to say. I'm a little overwhelmed, but at the close reading and the response here, and it's, wow, I can't wait to speak more with each of you individually, and perhaps your classes. With respect to people that your students can interview, you know, there are so many people here connected to this history, and there are so many more stories than I could ever fit in the book. And I just want to point out a few of them and there are a number of survivors here of, like your relative, right, who also counts as a survivor. And I would like the survivors of the November 3rd, 1979 to stand up, because these are people that you can go talk to and listen to their stories. So anyone who would like to, who was there that day, please stand up. And Lewis Pitts, who's part of this story, came in after the shooting to help lead the legal team that won justice. I mean, a brilliant group of people that saw in a federal civil suit that Klansmen, Nazis, a police informant, and police officers in Greensboro were jointly liable for death. Nothing like that had ever happened in this country before. And there are at least 2 people here who were part of the Truth and Reconciliation process, Pat Clark and Jill Williams. I couldn't have written this book without the roadmap that they provided. I mean, and that work continues to reverberate through this community. Cultural change is slow, but it couldn't be happening without what they did. And so there's so many more people, because one of the things that happened when I went into that coffee shop and met the Johnsons was I heard this traumatic event. I couldn't believe that it had happened in 1979. I couldn't believe that I didn't know about it in 1979, and something felt very wrong about the fact that I didn't know about it. But the part that brought me back was that they hadn't quit, that they weren't cynical, that they were still facing the world with love. And that was what brought me back and kept me going for 7 years. And I think as we begin to talk about what we can do, that spirit, you know, is something that we can try to emulate, learn from, capture.
Okay, so let's turn to that. Where do we go with this history? I was not given complete direction in terms of whether the audience can also ask questions or make comments, but I'm getting a nod that that would be appropriate as well. What do you think needs to happen with this? We know the story. We've got a wonderful way of going back and getting the details. Where do we go? This is a time that I don't know if many of us thought we'd be here at this point. I'm a bit of an elder. I graduated over there in Durham in a segregated environment. I certainly did not imagine that in 2026 we would be dealing with some of the issues that we've dealt with, and we continue to get surprised on some level by the degree to which we have not yet come to grips with this reality of race relations and also class relations in this country. So let's talk about some of the ways in which we can use this story and do the work that needs to be done today. Many of you are already talking about the ways that you might use it in the classroom, but I open up the panel and I open up the audience to talk about where do we go from this? What does this story give us the command to do? Where we are right here today.
Can I say this? So Morningside is not just about race, right? It's about, it has a lot to do with communism, right? Class, language use. But aside from the actual massacre, what Aran Shetterly's book has reminded and reinforced me to remember and to pass on to my students is how important it is for us to tell our stories. Aran is a historian, right? And we may not all be able to be that historian that gets a book deal, but we all have a story. And the reason why, part of the reason why Reverend Nelson was vilified through the media is because enough of us, I think, are not telling the story. I know that Black people have trauma lodged in our bodies, and often we don't want to remember. But I think that hurts us, not to remember and not to tell the story and not to pass it on. It's shameful how many of my first-year comp students today, just last week, at A&T, had not heard of the Greensboro Four. Did not know that Jesse Jackson attended the university, right? To STEM school, but they didn't know about Ronald McNair. It's a whole building named after him. I think we have not done enough to tell our story. And we get excited about the Aran Shetterlys who hear this story and then do something with it. And I don't think enough of us are telling our stories just in our kitchen tables, in living rooms, in our classrooms, right? And this story is so large because it's not just Reverend Johnson's story, but he's talking about America and the government, and in Baldwin fashion, all of what happened yesteryear is happening right now.
That's right.
And it's allowed to happen because we don't know the history. I feel like we're in a Sankofa moment if we allow ourselves to go back and get it.
Yeah.
And then use it for this present moment. Now this book is long. It's a long book.
A lot of pages.
But the way that it is outlined and told as a story invites the continued reading. I didn't read it at night because it's heavy. But in addition to us doing something with this book, I just wonder, what are we going to do with the books inside of us?
All right.
So that we don't have to hear about Reverend Nelson's story and others 20, 30 years later. We've been here all this time and we're just now discovering this story. That's wild. And I hope I'm safe to say this, but I was talking to my friend Jasmine and her father, who's very black nationalist, and one of the questions he asked is about, why is it that African Americans can't seem to really get over? And I think about Jewish folks. They don't let that story die. They tell their story over and over and over and over, and their children know that story and know that pain over and over and over and over, and they do more than survive, they have thrived. But black people don't seem to tell their stories because of the trauma, of the pain, don't want to deal with it. And I think that's a problem.
Hey, let me just quickly add that we hear about the A&T 4. What about the Bennett 4 or 5 or 6 or 10? Because I understand there's a group of Bennett students who are very much involved with planning. But on that day that history captured, they weren't included. So where's the Bennett statutes? Can someone shed some light on that? Because that's a book.
That's another book.
Well, I will step up to the mic for a moment about this. There are two very good books that have been written about Bennett, both by Linda Brown, who was the grandniece, I believe, of Willa Player, who was the woman president here during much of this 60s stuff. She wrote a book called Bells of Liberty. And of course, it is the story of a very well-planned out strategy for what happened on February the 1st in 1960. And we tell that story over and over again. And just like we are being told, the stories often don't get told until you tell the story and make it complete. Yes, indeed, some people have the view that those 4 young men got up and decided to go down on February the 1st and sit down. They did not. There had been planning, strategizing all through the fall semester. In fact, there was a decided point in not doing anything in the fall semester because there was going to be the holiday break in December. And there was going to be continuing discussion about how it was going to play out in the spring. And the young men went forward, and then the rest is history. But it is important that we tell our own stories. And I can really resonate. I must tell you the same thing occurred with the story about the women calculators. So many of the stories don't get told by the people who were there, and I'm not sure why. I guess maybe we don't think our stories are important. I don't know. So there are some of you who have a microphone out in the audience. We're going to open it up so that we can really begin to get some conversation going.
Oh, wait, since I'm kind of on the panel, I do want to say something about telling our story.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry. No. I do want to say something about that, especially considering that I teach creative writing and my students are here. This project did start with Dr. Bryant Aya, but it was very important for them to read the story, to learn our history, to see where they're going. And while we did that, the curriculum was such to help them figure out what is your moral premise. What does Seinfeld and Socrates have in common? There is a moral premise to the story. If you do something well, then your result will show that. If you make a wrong decision, then the result will show that. So what our students have learned is not only a piece of history that they should know and have not been taught, but they are also learning to find their voice. That is very important in this day and age. They must understand their history, where we have been, so that they can look at the given circumstances and determine where we are going. And while they're doing it, they must tell the story. Because as long as the hunter tells the story, they will receive the glory, not the lion. We have mighty lions, so it is imperative to support the arts. Science is amazing, technology is amazing, but the humanities and the arts,
Yes, and the arts.
that is a must. That is the heartbeat of any institution. So I wanted to make sure I said that.
I'd like to add that teaching our story and telling our story and teaching our history and relating that to the cultural imprint, the ancient imprint. All of this goes into education reform. Everything we're doing, everything you're doing is education reform. And so this is not just a nationwide movement. Education reform is a worldwide movement, and it is dealing with the dying ideology of racism. So to the young people, particularly the young people, I tell my students, you're holding power in your hand, that device. If you are holding that device, and you're talking about the sweater that's on sale, you are lost. But if you're holding up that device and talking about, again, books like these, read this book. I don't understand why, again, your generation kind of doesn't love books, but there are ebooks. You know, you have that power in your hand. Movements have been started on social media worldwide. So everything we're talking about in here deals with education reform and the need to know.
So what's next? That's my interest. You know, history is history, and we go to what's next because of history. My question is, who are the same people today who is doing what was done in the book? Because when you look at the world today, even over here in the United States, especially over here in the United States, that same thing is being done to people today. And are we gonna have to wait, like the question was, are we gonna have to wait for years for their story to be told by somebody else? What can be done to enlighten the world to watch out against and even speak against what is even being done today?
Good evening, afternoon. I'm Louis Brandon. I've been here. I am not a historian. I'm a scientist. I was trained as a scientist. So facts and truths are important to me. And so when you're telling these stories or when you're collecting these stories, make sure you vet the stories. A lot of what I hear and what is being written is revisionist history.
Say so.
I can tell you about 1960 because I was here, okay? I was a part of it. And so I was here when Dr. King came to speak here, and I know why he spoke here. It was not because people didn't want him to speak in Greensboro. It was because Bennett was the largest place that could hold the people. But you get a different story. So, so truth and facts are important to me. And I hear so much about what happened, and I'm saying, wait a minute, I know what the truth is, because I was here. Now, I have written quite a bit about Bennett's involvement in the movement in 1960. I personally have done that because nobody else was telling that story, but I did. And so I know what the story is. I don't want revisionist history. If you're gonna go to people and talk to people, get the facts. There's only one truth about anything. Many truths is only beliefs. There's only one truth about anything. The sun comes up in the east and settles in the west. You can't change that. That's a fact. That's a truth. All right? So let's, I want people to collect stories. I collected a lot of materials over the years, okay? And I got stuff at my house that other people don't have about what happened in 1960, in 1962, in 1963, okay? One of the days, I got to give it to somebody. Some of it's going to Bennett, some of it's going to A&T. But I want people, when you do and you collect these stories, get the truth. And don't revise the history of the movements. People are writing stuff. There's a new book out by, what's her name, Abby Phillips. When I looked at the piece on A&T, and I said, well, where did you get your information from? She got the information from somebody who wrote something in 1996, when she could have gone to the archives at A&T. And what she wrote is not true, okay? So that's my plea, is that when you collect these stories, make sure you get the vetted story.
Can I add to that?
Okay.
I just want to add to that real quickly. A moment, I went with the Johnsons when they received an NAACP Lifetime Achievement Award. I think it was 2018, and we were in Raleigh. And Reverend Dr. William Barber was presenting it to them. And he said, in 2012, when I became the chair of the North Carolina NAACP, people said, don't go talk to Nelson Johnson. Don't go over there to Greensboro and talk to him. And he said, so the minute they said that, that's the first place I went. Now, I just want to say, in all of our communities, there are these people, right, who people say, oh, they're divisive, they're communists, they're this, they're that, they're the other thing. Don't talk to them. Go talk to them. They're the ones with the stories. They're the ones who are going to know a lot of the facts. And check the facts, but go talk to them.
As we talk about solutions, I really appreciate the conversation about the need to foster the arts and protect the arts. And the message that has run through the conversation about how culture changes. The education reform comments. Right now, there's a real need in community for our younger children to have access to this information. So as we think about solutions, we need to return to the community forums and creating community opportunities for younger people to get this information. These students have been phenomenal. Yesterday there was, of course, the mock trials that went on with middle school students. Because our culture is under attack, and of course that information is being pulled out of the classroom, we must create community classrooms. So in terms of another way to go and some more approaches, I'm advocating for that. I'm one of the students of Yabu here in Greensboro, and that was a community approach. That's how I met Reverend Johnson and Ms. Joyce. So it's important for us to do that now. So all of these fine young college students that are doing this work, the invitation is to reach the younger people beneath you, share this information. As Dr. Williams has talked about what you're learning and being in touch with the realities of these stories, we invite you to make sure that younger people are getting in touch with you and learning from you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Peace and blessings, everybody. I'm coming to you live from Asheville, North Carolina. I drove and made it here. We brought money in the past from Asheville, went to start North Carolina NC University. So I got to let you know that, all right? And I want you to know that I come from a tradition of testimony. Okay, we ain't doing this, we ain't doing that, whatever, what more can we do? Well, let me tell you something. I am so grateful my brother spent majority of his life incarcerated. And when my mother transitioned in Asheville, she was known as the Queen Mother of Asheville. Did so many incredible things. My brother came and he was still on probation. And he said, why did it take me this long? So what I said, first you got to do is tell your story, bro. You got to tell your story. This year, 2026, my brother is a co-author in this book with Master P, Mastering Mental Health. Okay? I tell him everywhere I go, I'm going to tell his story. Because not only him, but his wife, who was with him through all this time of going in and out and incarceration, learning about himself, she is also a co-author in the book to tell their stories. I decided that I was not going to let somebody else tell my story. So I have been using my Ancestry page. Everybody can go on Ancestry, they got free options. And I write like a journal on my Ancestry page of what I was doing, who I was meeting, all of this stuff, how I was feeling. I came in the building here, and I did go on social media, and I did my picture with myself talking about I'm going into Bennett College. This is my first time here. My god sister went to this school. Here I am. You know, I'm living. It's a matter of just living it. I made some cartoons for little children, for the children, telling them about different people in history. Okay? We all can do something every day. And imagine what would happen if everybody in this room did just one thing. Just one thing, that ripple effect, how powerful that would be. I got money from the United States federal government to find indigenous and black people burial grounds unmarked. $339,000. 2 years ago, they took the money. March, when they really couldn't take the money because it had already been appropriated by Congress. Nevertheless, the job I had, I was getting paid. They took the money and said to me I could not go to work anymore. Well, North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson sued the federal government. And the federal judge said, hey, you know what, you're right. I was terminated in March, I was reinstated in July. I'm still on the payroll right now.
Bridget, as the moderator, I'm always conscious of time. I'm going to take my lead from you. We've got about 4 minutes. I want to go on and respectfully finish this panel. All right. Let me say a couple of things about what we just talked about, and that is, for me, rooted in critical thinking. That's one of the other courses that I teach here at Bennett. We have a tendency sometimes to take in information and take it as truth. It is our role as thinking people to assess whether that material is correct or not. There's a saying, I'm probably not going to quote it completely correctly, but it's everything you hear is an opinion. Everything you see is a perspective. It is your duty, if you're going to then use that as truth, to make sure you have done some checking before you then go and pass it forward. So I want to end with the last paragraph in the book, and I'm going to read it. We are told that Nelson and Joyce Johnson have learned a great deal since 1979. One hard lesson is how long it can take to shift the culture of a police force and of a city and its institutions. The resistance to the change they and others call for is still powerful. Though they are tired, they are wiser. And like our dream of democracy, they refuse to quit. And I would add, so should we. The victory, they will tell you, is found in struggle and in love and perhaps in time. The struggle continues. I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank all of you for being here. And let's eat. I don't know how we're going to transition to lunch, but I think that's the next thing on the agenda.
Yeah. I hope so. That'd be great. Yeah. Let's give them another round of applause. Yeah. Did you all enjoy it? And don't forget, we do have the book available for purchase today, right out in the lobby.
Question, though.
It is for purchase.
You're smarter than that.
Right out in the lobby. I don't know.
Wow, that would have been brilliant. I could have done
But they'll let you know at the table, so you can go
what
get your
great
book.
idea.
Students, we are getting ready to go to lunch, and usually we do our elders and our children to get in line first, but we do want to make an exception.
I'm serious.
Y'all gotta leave, y'all go get y'all food. Yeah, I can let them know that y'all will be up there.
Great
That A&T student want to jump and go by, but we got some to-go plates for y'all, so y'all can go ahead and
File
get in
that
line.
away.
So we have a taco station, the food is available.
Thank you.
But one thing I want to do, yeah, we got someone else coming up right quick.
I'd love to. Yeah.
So hold on one second,
Okay.
because we do need somebody to bless this food.
Oh, yeah. And they're going to say grace, I think, so.
Reverend Allen, can you come to the front to bless this food? Or maybe I can just bring the mic to you.
Yeah, I have yours. Right here. Yeah. Make sure I spell your name right.
Right now. And right before that, we have a special message
Which would
before
you
we
prefer?
bless the food. Just hold 1 second.
I'm State Senator Gladys Robinson, representing this district. And on the program is Governor Stein invited. I need to say on his behalf that he would have had he had enough notice. I am pleased to offer remarks on his behalf, not long, but to say that he would be here. Hopefully he will be here next week. Governor Stein is the son of one of the lawyers in the first firm that was an integrated firm in Charlotte. And so, Lewis is waving his hand. But I would say that he has been on Bennett's campus. He will come and he will support the next year for him. But on behalf of the state of North Carolina and Governor Stein, I want to extend greetings, and I want to say we applaud the work that is going on with the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Committee.
What? Thank you. Yeah, no, you know, for example, the Uhuru bookstore that they had gave me an opportunity to sort of.
Let us bow our
connect, you know,
heads. Gracious Heavenly
that
Father, we
connection,
thank
the
you for
importance of
this occasion. We thank you for those who gathered and the difference they make in their respective communities and the difference they will make when they leave this place. Now bless the food that's been so lovingly shared so that we can break bread together and know, God, that we will be refreshed and that the battle is not over, but we will be ready to go forth because victory will be won. It is in the name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
So lunch is now served right outside, so you can go and get your food.
Does he?
Thank you.